So ultimately, I don't have a hell of a lot to say about this as a documentary because it was just, you know, it kind of was what it was. I think it lingered a little too long on some of the band bullshit that I didn't really care about. But it got me thinking about this. So, ours is a society which deserves to be punished. We have called out for correction so loudly for so long, yet we act surprised when it arrives. Our culture has banished dark gods, washed away, cleansed out are all the divine representations of our most venal, and some would argue most human, desires. Our Buddha smiles like a jolly fat man. Our gods are clean and upstanding citizens, and even when they aren't, we simply hand-wave it away. Their dark sides are covered by slick apologetics. I have few beliefs I'd call spiritual, but this is about as close as I get. We are all beings of light and darkness. The two are intimately connected. Light and dark, life and death, eros, thanatos, God, devil. How we handle these natures is how we are defined. Some find balance, some go to extremes, still others go into territory beyond. Having an outlet for our dark natures, a place we can channel those thoughts and feelings and explore them, exercise them, seems essential to me. Maybe this is because I feel particularly sympathetic to my own dark nature. This outlet is precisely what sanitized monoculture is attempting to destroy and what so much of our culture is dedicated to eliminating. Maybe it's because I believe ritual is powerful as a psychological force, but I feel like if it was socially acceptable for me to carry out satanic curses upon the souls of, say, motion picture executives, I could have a mechanism by which I could channel and work through my hate and anger. I know the devil probably isn't going to actually come and suck the soul out of the Google billionaires I can't fucking stand. But perhaps the ritual act of praying to the legions of hell for it for 7 days, and then blasting a load into a pentagram or some shit, heals me somehow. It gives me power over those dark feelings. Fortunately, for the awesome forces of Neo-Puritanism, these kind of outlets and expressions are dutifully marked as socially unacceptable, and even worse, heretical. Where there was once a guy you prayed to if you wanted world peace, and a guy you prayed to so your crops grew well, and there was this other guy you prayed to for some other impulses in your life. Things like sex, the misfortune of your rivals, forbidden knowledge. You had the option. You may have had to be discreet about it, your trip to visit the temple of Asmodeus or whatever the fuck, but it was just as valid a human impulse. Then these cults got it in their heads that there was only one God, and that God was everything good and righteous. Now look where the fuck we are. These squeaky clean maniacs have spent the better part of a few centuries taking away any outlet for the dark impulses that course through your veins. As soon as they find a new one, they make sure to oppose it. They have committed themselves to sewing up all the ripped seams in our culture, but no matter how many stitches they put in there to contain this darkness, it always finds a way to come spilling out. Serial killers are just the latest rip in the fabric, the newest outlet. They are shamanic figures in our society, channeling the madman who wants to howl at the moon and fuck and kill anything that gets in the way. That person lives inside each of us, and we are all so much more closer than we think to a frothing mouth full of foam and human gristle. These maniacs serve as the place where we put all these feelings. Most of us will never understand what it's like to stand alone, outside of human morality and steadfastly in the camp of pure evil. The fascination with them is the same fascination and fetishization the repressed always feel. Denial breeds a deeper kind of fanatic. They represent the part of us polite society says should never, ever get a voice, and in denying us that voice have ensured that the outlet for this voice will never be healthy, never be anything but destructive and a waste of human life. I had the extreme pleasure of talking to artist Joe Coleman, who was interviewed in this film, at length on this very topic for Fangoria back in the day. Something he said to me about his own relationship with serial killers, he corresponded with the likes of Charlie Manson and John Wayne Gacy, stuck with me ever since. You could say he helped shape my whole perspective on the concept. He said this: if you want to talk about the real questions in life and the real questions about morality and reason, these are people that have gone over the edge. So who are you going to talk to? These are the people who have really confronted that. What do they think, being on the other side of morality, humanity, and reason? All the saints I grew up learning about, they'd all suffered some kind of great suffering. Whether it was a saint that had their eyes gouged out or beheaded, they became saints from a martyrdom, a great tragedy. I thought that was powerful. I began to think that it's the shadow self of these saints that is just as important. The shadow self being, for instance, what about the person who committed the atrocity on that saint? The soldier that stabbed Jesus or crowned him with thorns? That side has to be just as compelling. One would not exist without the other. It seemed almost as if their side of the story needed to be told. Joe understood that the reason we have serial killer culture is that we are no longer allowed to worship at black altars. The monoculture is death. We have nowhere to put all the blackness it produces but into our treasured tribal shaman, who exact the price of our comfort in terror and blood, which is all too real. Then we hold up the executioner, the man who wields the sacrificial dagger, and exalt him in our tabloids. Then it all happens over and over again. Serial killer culture is God, America, and apple pie. It's the price of your suburbs and your need for an all-American ideal.
Dave Pace, happy Halloween, my friends.
Happy, yeah.
Very happy. Well, listen, Max programmed this show, so I want to get him started. We got Joe here, we got Sara, Brooke here. We're going to hear everybody's thoughts and opinions on this film and what it's trying to convey to us. Max, I got to ask you, why are we back to serial killers again with you? I mean, obviously.
Why not?
I mean, we did it last year on Joe. Check this out, because this is really interesting. Because I thought about this a lot.
Well, we were texting about.
Well, you and I did have a couple of words about it, but we had Max last Halloween. Listen. First of all, Max programs every Halloween episode. I mean, that's what we're doing. That's how it's going to be for however long this lasts. Last year he does. What did he do, Joe?
Charles Manson.
Charles Manson. We did Henry Lee Lucas.
And then the documentary about the guy who killed those three.
The West Memphis Three. We did that.
Yeah.
So he gave us a documentary and then two movies here. So this year he comes back with more serial killers, but also in between, Joe, over the summer when we take a break, he programmed a mini episode. About a serial killer.
Another serial killer. What a surprise! I was really looking forward to just sitting down and watching like a macabre horror film.
Me too.
And then watching this documentary. But
it was so funny. This afternoon I threw on a simple, stupid horror movie from like 10 years ago called Joyride, and I was like, man, this is what my mouth is watering for.
Directed by John Dahl.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I'm going after here during Halloween. And he is just giving us some different kind of stuff. And I got to tell you, I'm laughing at all three of these movies. I found them to be more comedic than horrifying.
Well, this one, oh man, I don't know. We're having. Did you guys have this filmmaker on, or you didn't? No. You did. Okay, no. Yeah, this one unintentionally funny, I think, in a lot of ways.
Unintentionally funny.
Yeah, I kind of felt like
I hear you.
Well, go ahead. You were going to ask Max a question.
Well, Max, basically, and quite simply, I mean, why is this a recurring theme here? Why can't I watch The Shining? Why are we doing that? I mean, it doesn't have to be The Shining, but why are we watching this stuff again this year? And I'm not complaining. I'm just curious.
Halloween's coming, skeletons will be after you, witches, cats, and big black bats, ghosts and goblins too.
He's so excited.
No.
What was the question, Tom? Oh yeah, why serial killers?
Again.
Hey, listen, I'm reading a book right now called Charles Manson Behind Bars, and it's written by a dude named Willie Boxcar Menza. And this is really, I mean, I've got like every book you can possibly imagine on good old Chaz, but this really takes you inside the prison, inside Cochrane's men's facility that Charlie no longer is housed at. But this is this is a subculture. This is a world that's going on, and this is where I'm currently at in the state of horror. Because I got to tell you something. I love the strain. Last night's Walking Dead I thought was the best Walking Dead I've seen since the beginning of that show.
Agreed.
And I'm so lukewarm about the Walking Dead. There was so much tension and urgency and scares, and I really felt my heart racing again. And I got to tell you, man, I was really surprised that imagined horror was grabbing me, you know, and you know, I really dug Coven, and I haven't seen American Horror Story Freak Show, which takes place evidently where our guest is residing, Juniper, Florida. But for me, fellas, right now, for me, true world horror is what's scaring me, okay? I'm not being bought and sold by the Ebola stories, but I got to tell you, things like ISIS, you go to a website like bestgore.com, which has really the true, awful, horrendous, horrific fucking things.
You're talking about people, you're talking about real people getting their heads cut off, Mags.
Yes, these are the horror, because everyone has
Of course it's horrible.
Everyone has their head so far up their shitholes and thinking that they're watching these different news outlets and thinking they're getting the news. No one's getting the news, man. I had no idea Brazil was such a fucked up country. I thought Brazil was a beautiful country, and I'm sure it is in parts, but people are doing terrible things to each other, Tom. Terrible things to each other.
Max,
and it's enough. It's destroying me.
They're doing terrible things everywhere. Everywhere. It doesn't matter. Brazil, America, there's no difference. Walk into a men's prison, for crying out loud. You want to see some horror? Watch Oz. That's horrifying.
I'm with you 100%, but this is the point, Tom, and this is what the point why I wanted to tie in these three films.
Okay.
Serial killer culture, 15 murders inside the mind of a serial killer, and Man Bites Dog. Because this is exploitive, man. This is like, I just told you about bestscore.com. I go to bestscore.com every other day. Why do I go there? I hate going there, and I only feel miserable, and I only feel angry at the human race.
It has so much to do with what Dave was saying in his review. Actually, he started it. I think Dave was something like this cult. We deserve to be punished.
Yeah,
something like that. It kind of flowed from there. Really great review, or really great essay.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure it was a review, but it was pretty fascinating.
I didn't really like the film, by the way. I thought
I know. Well, you kind of, it was more interesting what you wrote than actually reviewing the film, in my opinion, anyway. But yeah, man, I mean, I think that what the question that Tom asked Max, and it's all tied up with what Dave was saying. I think in that there's, we're equal parts dark side and ugliness and, impulses that we've repressed. And, the serial killer culture that all these people in this film are obsessed with. And as I guess Max falls right in line on that.
I don't know.
It's about trying to come
to the conversation yet, though. I don't
it's about
fall in
trying
line with these people.
Well, it sounds like you're trying to trying to come to terms on some level with that dark side, or that, that fear of violence and that dark impulses of you. Is that not?
It's not about
somewhere
coming
in
to
the
terms. I have no choice. The horrors of the world have gotten inside my house. They're now splattered against my walls. And I'm talking about the reason I chose this documentary, which I agree, I think is a very, very weak documentary.
Extremely weak.
I think there are elements of this documentary that are getting back to my point about exploitive. I mean, if you think I watched this thing and got off on it, you are dead wrong. I watched this thing and got very, very irate at these people collecting artifacts and trinkets.
Yeah, but you're going to gore.com or whatever it is every
Joe,
day.
you don't know what that is. That's just a reflection of reality that's going on. Those are photos and video posts of all the horrific things going on in the world. That's not some creepy guy collecting
But somebody's
them.
making money off.
Right,
Somebody's making money.
Well, yeah, but exactly. And this is the point of why I'm bringing this up. I want to elevate the conversation, not to just about what the doc is about.
Okay.
But how the fact that these people, is it right or wrong? Is it good or bad that they are profiting off of these things. Like, you've got the guy with the dime museum. You've got the guy who's dealing in John Wayne Gacy art. The great Joe Coleman. Are you kidding? He has his own documentary that's amazing. You know, he's more of like a reflection of all this stuff. You got the guy who I think we're going to talk to, who
on the next episode. Yeah.
Okay,
well, you're talking about exploitation, which is definitely tied into Man Bites Dog as well. But just that you're obviously a participant in this exploitation if you're going to that website every day.
So even though
I mean, it's true because he's.
You're right. You have
that website is existing because somebody's selling ads on it. So you're an active participant in the exploitation.
Right. Even though I'm not clicking the ads, I'm an active. Right. So why? But I feel a struggle with that. I feel a struggle with the fact that I keep looking at this stuff. Why do I keep looking at these bad accident photos? Why do I keep looking at the real life guy with the squished head with the eyeball popping out? All it does is disturb me and upset me and make me lose even more faith in humanity. What am I doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a point that they bring up in that documentary that, you can't blame the media because if it's not John Wayne Gacy's paintings, then it's going to be his socks or something, whatever he said, the dirt under his house or whatever. Someone's going to be making a buck on it because someone's going to buy it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, the media is an exploiter. So the killer is a terrible person, and the people who are are buying this stuff. They're part of the chain.
Joe, it's all bad.
It's difficult not to. And look, man, it's difficult not to be fascinated by. I've bought serial killer books and all that stuff. So it's not like I'm separating myself.
Of course,
from it.
yeah, and the same with me. And I'm not trying to separate myself from Max either. Because I have an infatuation with Ted Bundy. I mean, I watch his interviews. I've watched any movie that they've made about this guy. I'm completely infatuated with him, and it's all a part of the big serial killer machine, Joe.
Yeah. I mean, it is something to consider. The exploitation's it's not a pretty thing, man. And I don't know. It's difficult for me to come to terms with as well.
Well, Joe, normally this is a boys' club, right? I mean, we're always, it's just a bunch of dudes talking all the time. We got a chick here. We haven't even heard her voice yet.
Hi, Sara.
Hi. You guys are so in love with each other. I figured I'd let you keep talking.
Yeah, that's why we don't have any women here usually. Sara, you gave this documentary a shot this afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Nothing there.
Well, I had a couple of issues with it. I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying about the fact that it's very, some of it's a little disturbing, how some of these people they just seem kind of delusional in that they're talking about how, especially like the first guy in the film was talking about how he doesn't do this to make money or anything, but yet he is working, he worked very closely with all these serial killers over a long span of time to sell their artwork and to sort of be their broker. So I thought that was a little bit hypocritical of one of the people. But I think my problem with this was that, as a storyteller, I like there to be some sort of story woven in about why these people are doing this, and there was really no connection. It was just like a handful of people who all have this fascination.
Right. It was lazy.
Evil.
It was just it was very, very lazy. I mean, he didn't even try to interweave all this shit together, Joe. It was just like that guy, this guy, that guy. There's no theme there.
Right.
Well, there's no arc either. There's no progression. There's no forward thrust, and most importantly, there's no real revelation except Joe Coleman. The whole thing. If I watched the last 5 minutes of it, I would have been happy. You know what I mean? Like that guy was really smart and really insightful. Everybody else I'm
laughing at most of these guys, Joe.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to denigrate anybody. You know what I mean? Everybody likes what they like. Everybody's likes what they like. But as a film, there's nothing revelatory to me. There wasn't anything incredibly illuminating, and maybe it's just because I've already, from our experience on the Horror Palace, that I've already sort of covered a lot of that ground.
Gotcha. Yeah, and the guy has obviously a fascinating subject that we could sit here and talk for hours, about and. There's just Joe. I mean, it's just. Again, like what Sara's saying and what you're saying, just the film aspect of this, lazy. Just a bad job.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like it was repetitive. And then I will say that people who are obsessed with serial killer culture, like the subjects in the film, will probably like this film a lot. And I think it suffers from the same thing as probably 90% of documentaries, is that it tends to be preaching to the choir. You know what I mean? Like it's a film for people who are already obsessed with serial killers, not people who are sort of interested, or it's not, or you know what I mean? They're not going to win anybody.
Yeah, that's
over,
interesting, Joe, because you brought that up during a review in the past. We were talking about religious, and you used that term, preaching to the choir. And it's like, I could sit there, I could watch Religulous, and I'm like totally into it because I'm going to agree with every single thing that Bill Maher is trying to convey to his audience.
How many right-wing conservative have actually watched a Michael Moore film, and how many people do you think actually had their minds changed by a Michael Moore film? Like probably 0.0.
You have a point there. Yeah, I mean that's a great.
You know what was actually interesting though? There was one part of this film that was actually really interesting, and it was at the very beginning. And I have to be honest with you guys, as it like kind of went on, I started to like fast forward on my little Netflix thing there because it was starting to get really repetitive. But the cool thing I thought, and I don't think it's cool, but it's just interesting how these well-renowned horrible evil serial killer people were sending letters to some of these brokers, and it was interesting just how they were like communicating like normal, and you see them as these monsters, which is what they obviously are. But it was interesting kind of how they established sort of like pseudo friendships with some of these people. I thought that was interesting because you just think that these people are socially completely not able to formulate any sort of relationships with anyone.
Well, most of them are sociopaths though. That
manipulative.
Yeah, that do appear to fit normally in society. Only a few, I think, were like a Richard Ramirez type. It's like it's hard for me to see someone like that, having, conversations with people that aren't, just downright frightening. Like, and it seemed to me that Sarah, I think that might be what you're talking about, is like, somebody was corresponding with Richard Ramirez. And he, it's almost like they're saying, this guy, he's not a bad guy here,
Well, yeah, dude, again, there was that Joe Coleman thing at the end. It was probably the only point, Sarah, and I agree with you, that like I thought was actually interesting was that, that Coleman guy was talking about somebody. Oh, no, maybe it was someone else. I forget. They had sent, Gacy had sent a letter of condolence to somebody about their mother passing or something like that,
and a card, like a Hallmark card, Joe.
Yeah, and he said this was probably one of the few interesting points of the film, is that Coleman, I think it was Coleman, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was like, we tend to think about these people as monsters, but they're actually human beings. It's just that their actions are monstrous, and that's a fine point.
Well, with Joe Coleman and his mother too, it's really important to understand that Joe was extremely close with his mother, to the point that he's insinuated in interviews that they've had a possibly incestuous relationship. So it gets like it's a lot weirder and darker than it even appears on the surface in this documentary, which is kind of disappointing about the documentary. Is like, I'm kind of interested in that. That's kind of a weird thing that you might want to point out in your documentary, that, hey, by the way, isn't there more going on here?
There shouldn't be. It should be no holds barred here, Dave. Right? I mean, you should try to dig as far and deep into the psyche of everybody as far as you can. I mean, Jesus Christ, Max, we do that here on this podcast. I mean, you got a subject of serial killer culture. Take it a step further, please.
Are you
I
talking
was
to me?
really disappointed in how they handled Joe, to be honest, just because.
Well, did you see the Joe Coleman doc, Dave? Didn't we talk about it?
Yeah, I think we did talk about it.
I wound up buying it. I think wasn't it your recommend?
Yeah, I think so. Joe's an amazing human being. Like, he's a really amazing human being. He's probably one of my favorite people I've ever talked to. I think like the hour and a half or so we spent together was just like, the guy is just dropping bombs on you the whole time, right? Like he's an absolutely incredible storyteller, and he's got this whole mythology, about himself and about his world. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Well, I gotta say, I am so disappointed in all of you because you clearly are not people. No, you are not people who enjoy lifting up the rock and looking underneath to see the worms. I mean, you're just not. You're
That's
all.
not
You're,
true.
That's so not
There were
true.
no worms to lift. There was no rocks to lift.
Are you listening to what we're saying here? We're trying to lift a rock, but this guy had his foot on it.
Look at these. Look at these creep shows in this dog. Look at these people. I mean,
Of course, and that's
we went out in
funny.
the backyard. We went out in the backyard with a guy who had a shed full of spiders and old Jeffrey Dahmer comic books.
To me, that's
I mean,
just
That guy was cool though. I like he was
he was
funny.
fantastic. But I love the fact that the film didn't even. I mean, it's angering you because it's a bad film, but I was angered by the moral questions it was stirring up with me. Is it right for a guy to make a buck off Gacy? Probably not. But what's the difference between that and someone personally connected to the crimes who writes a book and it becomes a bestseller? For me, it's like that's part of our history, our lore, our collective subconscious, whatever. You can't curb the curiosity and the bloodlust. So why do we? And you people clearly don't, which is fine. But why do we look at this stuff? Why do I go to that story in the newspaper? There is so much killing going on out here. How come those are the first stories I go to? It's like I've been programmed. And you know what that means? That means I am the least intelligent. That means I am than all of you. That means I am the most,
You believe this, Joe? Are you hearing this?
You know, you are all way too. You cannot be bothered
Joe,
with
please
like,
help
what's
me.
going on with like the baby that was found in the gutter with its throat slit. Me, this shit's keeping me up during the day, not at night. I'm sleeping much better
Listen,
with
if
Andrew.
any of these people that this dude interviewed were saying things like you're saying, interesting things, I could get behind this documentary. Joe, don't you think that most of these guys were like really just selling themselves and selling what they're doing? It was like
No, I think the guys with the banjo were definitely just trying to express their darkest innermost emotions.
Those guys were whack. Oh my god! Like who
Those
is paid
guys
to listen
really
to that?
bothered me.
Look, man. I mean, I do think it's an interesting discussion. The difference between exploitation and what news coverage or what research or whatever the fuck. I mean, these are fine points to discuss, and it's usually just a matter of taste, and that usually just means that it's all bullshit. Because you could say that you have good taste and you're talking about serial killers, and you're right to be doing it because you wrote a book about it. But really, you're just as freaking exploitative as those guys with the banjo. You know what I mean? So, like, it's a matter of degrees and a matter of taste. I mean, is exploitation? It is a fascinating topic of discussion.
Joe is going to bypass the dime museum and go to the library. I'm
going
to
that's
be
not
pulling
true.
your proverbial arm, Joe. Let's go into the dime museum. Let's go see.
Okay,
the
so
baby
you
in the
you need
bottle.
to draw. So this is where the discussion starts. So you have to draw the line somewhere, right? When I was let me see if you would draw this line. When I was 18 years old, I found myself in a friggin' apartment or something. A long fucking story. Anyway, it turns on a fucking snuff film in front of me where they have this woman.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was fucking terrible, right? So like at some point you got to draw the line, right?
Joe,
was
it Billy?
No, I didn't know.
Was it a real snuff film, Joe?
It was. It seemed real to me, man. Like it would.
Joe was really watching 8mm.
No, it seemed, dude. It was like unnerved. Like the dude was creepy, man. And it was like it was all in Japanese, and they just abducted this woman, and you just see they give her this friggin' enema and put her on a tree and spin her around and then release the enema, and it's just the most disgusting exploitive thing. I was like, dude. Yeah.
Oh, by the way,
so where do you draw the line?
So
at that point, I drew. That really informed me on what I was willing.
Joe, that
like
was
it made
a
me
bunch
think
of
about.
Weird Japanese performance artists, and they sent that file to America under the auspice that it was.
Well,
snuff.
it was before files. It was on VHS.
What's that shit, Max? That Ralph Cifaretto was always watching, the Faces of Death.
Yeah, Faces of Death, Traces of Death. I went through that whole phase in Seattle. Listen, you'll love this story, guys. You'll love this story. So I used to run a video store in Seattle, right on Lake Washington, okay? And my boss was the sweetest, most innocent, most unassuming little old lady. She didn't know. My corrupt, dark ass comes in, and I'm like, Karen, you've got to. I mean, we had like 19 copies of 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and I'm like, you need a section of sick. And I became the John Waters of that story, you know, curating just this Ed Wood movies and Traces of Death. And I made her buy all of these things, and I guaranteed her that this stuff would rent. None of this shit rented.
Yeah, Max, you had a whole winter's worth of viewing, didn't you?
I did. And my friend Ellen Buck and I would just like break into the store at night, you know, and well, not break into the store, we had keys, and take those movies and go watch them. And Our Place Video no longer exists.
Hey guys, I wanted to ask you about one thing about the film that I thought was really creepy, and even for what I write about, and I write some pretty messed up stuff. I really did not like how the guy in the beginning of the flick was talking about how he had sent Gacy his pictures of his son, and then he drew those pictures, and then he put that pogo or pongo, whatever that is, that clown. That was so freaking off. Like, why would you do that?
Characters, right?
No, it wasn't the Disney character one. It was just a picture. He like sent Gacy like 2 pictures of his boy. Like the child was like 2 years old, and then Gacy basically drew 2 pictures of this guy's kid, and then put a picture of his clown face next to one of the. And the guy was like laughing about it.
Well, that's, you know, I can't.
What are you gonna do?
What?
Right? Like, you know, it's one of those things that's so goddamn horrifying and just like bizarre and insane that like it defies all reason. The only thing you could do is laugh at it, I think. I don't know what the response to that is. It's that or just die right there on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's just like, that goes so far beyond brokering his artistry. He's actually sending his child's photos to this obvious monster.
Does that piss you off?
It does, because that's very exploitative of like a child who has no say whether or not his photograph is going to like a serial killer. I mean, and I'm sure that the guy wasn't intending to do anything malicious or bad. It just struck me as like not the right thing to do. And to have any photo of any child that you know, or your own kid, God forbid, in the hands of a serial killer is just, to me, it just seems like it kind of goes over the line. Maybe I'm just being sensitive about it, but it seems wacky to me.
Yeah, of course it's wacky. I think that what happens is it's like this groupie mentality where they get close to celebrity, like their version of celebrity, and it's all tied up with this fetishization, as Dave was saying in his review, of like this darkness, these things that represent these godlike demons or whatever. And you just do weird things, man. Just like you know, in the pagan rituals or whatever, you're sacrificing this and that or the other thing. This guy is getting so excited, he's almost in a metaphorical sense, almost, he's sacrificing his kid's image. It's fucking crazy, man. Max, have you ever tried to contact a serial killer like that? Like, would you consider yourself a groupie? Like, you're obviously infatuated with it.
Oh my God, Joe, do you really think I would bring that kind of negativity into my life? Listen, if you just don't know me, man. You think I'm a fucking serial killer groupie?
I'm asking you, dude.
Joe.
Tom, am I that far off base? Every movie that he programs on the show.
Well, it wouldn't, like, were you asking that question? I don't think is insulting. I think it's just like, you know what, Joe? I could see Max going, yeah, hell yeah, I've done it before. You know, God, no. I don't want any connection to those people. Those people are horrifying. Turn around and look at you. You don't want any connection. Turn around and look at your bookshelf. That's as far as my connection goes. Oh my. Hey, listen, one thing, guys, that really did creep me out in this documentary, and I want to talk about this. We'll wrap it up with this thought. Is I never heard of Albert Fish before, and this is one creepy fucking motherfucker. I know they weren't obviously real clips of him, but this guy obviously made a documentary film or some kind of film about this man Albert Fish, who was like he did all sorts of awful things, man. He's like murdering children, eating people. I don't know. I never heard of this guy before, so it was fascinating to learn about someone like that and how he existed a century ago.
You just brought everything to a screeching halt. Who cares about Albert Fish?
I do.
I do too. I'd never heard of them
so
before
now
this
you
movie.
two are interested in serial killers.
No, I never heard of the guy before.
Neither
It was
have
just,
I.
it was a little fascinating, and the little shots that the guy did from his movie.
Oh, so you did get something out of this, and you're like,
I'm telling you.
fascinated.
Did I say? Listen?
Now.
Did I?
Suddenly somebody's fascinated.
Did I say I got nothing out of this movie? I never said that. I'm just saying that, you know.
A little morbid curiosity overcame you, did it?
Yeah, man. That fucking dude was pretty scary, man.
Thank you.
Some skinny old fuck going around killing kids. That's nightmarish.
He was horrifying.
Boogeyman shit.
That's boogeyman shit, and there are a lot of boogie people in the world, and we must protect ourselves. And a movie like this really reminds you that listen, you're talking to a guy who walks around with a knife strapped to his belt, man. I got a blade on me at all times.
Oh my God.
I don't trust anything, man. Oh,
You walk around with a knife on you all the time, Max.
Like a pirate.
Yeah, I do. You like that? Hey, I want to call you out on something, Brooke. You know, the last time we were on the show, and I know you don't want to get into your private life, whatever. It's very precious. We're not going to get into that. But I remember there was one dude, another dude, I don't know who it was, but I had called you out on what a load he was. And you knew that I was right. You knew I was right. And slowly but surely, guess what? Is it fair to say you might not be with that person anymore? I'm not saying it's current. I'm not saying it's the past. I just want some acknowledgement that I was right. And you're calling me crazy? I have a third eye, honey.
Sarah, that's the official segue into it's now Sarah Brooke time.
Thank you, Tom. I think Max is just pissed off because I can't believe that he'd actually walk around with a knife in his pants.
It's not in my pants. It's strapped to my belt. And I got to tell you something else. That cover photo of you on Facebook squatting is really hot.
I'm not squatting, dude. I'm like standing.
Squatting, dude. No,
What?
You are not standing. How are you standing when I'm looking right at you right now in a perfect full-on squat with the ass sticking out? Is this how you sell your books?
Oh, I know which picture you're talking about. No, I was crouching. I was
You were
not squatting.
crouching. Oh, okay. Well, still very, very alluring.
Thank you. Thank you. I want your knife, Max.
You want my knife?
I do.
Her name is Scarlett. I'm going to send a picture of it to Joe and Tom, and they're going to post it for this show.
Max, that's a squat.
Thank you, Tom. No, Tom. It's a crouch.
It's a nice squat.
Crouching tiger.
It's a butter knife, Tom.
Hey, Sarah, I got to agree with Max. I mean, I'm just a fat guy with the gout, but, you know, that's a pretty hot picture.
Now, why would you bring up your gout during Sarah's segment?
Because I'm selfish. I want the attention.
The fact you have gout again is outrageous, insulting, and the fact that you have made such great strides. You quit your job, you got a new job,
Thank you, Max.
and you started on Wednesday, and you're going to be making more money, and so it is called upon you to once again take care of yourself, and you get that gout again.
Yes, I do.
And what did Joe say it was? What did you say it was, Joe? This disease? You said it was.
It's King Louis VIII disease. It's
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, because it used to be, all the peasants, they didn't eat the rich food, but Tom's like a king. He sits there with a gigantic turkey leg and the velvet robe
me.
with the.
Sarah,
You are all my subjects.
do you think it's hot that Tom has the gout? Would you bang a dude who had the gout? Be honest.
First of all, you don't have.
What are you asking anyway? Me or Joe?
Yes, I think it's very hot. I think
Sarah,
Tom in a big
bang
puffy
Yeah.
crown, and a big puffy crown is very alluring.
Bang a dude who had the gout. If you knew you weren't going to get it.
Are you asking me, Max?
Is gout contagious?
No.
It depends who had it. I mean, if it was like a really hot guy who had gout, it's fine. So I don't
Hot
think
guys
that's
get gout?
yeah, of course.
See?
They drink lots of
That's-
wine. They eat lots of meat.
Yeah.
That describes Tom perfectly.
Listen, I eat a
hot
lot
gout.
of meat and drink a lot of wine. I've never had gout.
Well, you're
So
lucky.
what is it, Tom?
What is it? Well, I don't know. It's a curse, man. It's just
From the hand of God himself.
hell yeah.
Do you eat a
Dave,
lot
have
of filet
you ever had
mignon?
gout? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can't afford filet. Yeah, I do. I eat a lot of red meat. I mean, I've really cut down on it though over the past couple years. I mean, once I was diagnosed with this horrible, horrible condition, I have tried to cut down on the red meat and the shellfish, both which I mean I really enjoy both, but the beer is what I think does it. I mean, I'm a sucker for IPA, you know, and I have this urgency to
Every show goes with Tom on the hot seat.
yeah, we got Sara Brooke here, and it's turned around.
It's always Tom on the hot seat.
Here's the thing: Sarah's interrogating me.
No, it's like it's just because it's just the natural flow of the show. Tom's always trying to wrestle out of something.
Tom's got like a naked bulb dangling over his head at all times.
Well, you hear him. He's in an empty room.
You know? Yeah, like a metal folding chair.
I'll tell you, it was torture enough watching 2 out of these 3 movies. You know, now you want to torture me on the show.
Oh, Tom, what would you rather watch? This or Joe's looming Kurosawa? What would you rather watch? Come on.
Kurosawa.
I'd rather watch Kurosawa.
Would you rather watch this, Tom, or what's that movie that starts with an A, Joe? You guys did it on your costume drama.
Oh, I would rather watch these 3 movies than Anna Karenina.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
without a doubt.
Well,
Anaconda?
No, Anna Karenina.
Sarah is so into anacondas and knives and pants right now. It's awesome. Now, darling, when
Anna
you're doing
Karenina
that
don't
hot
want none
squat,
unless you got buns, hon.
speaking of buns, when you're doing that hot squat against the wall, and you got the jeans on,
Crouch!
you're sticking that sweet round rear shelf out, and you're throwing the big curls back, the red curls, and you're trying to turn on all your fans. What's really going through your mind there? You're like, look at me. I've written 19,000 books. I'm going to get them with this one. Are you wearing undies? Are you getting aroused? I mean, what's going on in those jeans?
Yeah, Sarah, that looks like a pretty bumpy cement wall there.
You know, there's actually a secret to that picture. I wasn't even in a corridor when we took it. I was actually somewhere else.
What does that mean?
That means that picture is a little bit photoshopped. So I may have not been in a corridor crouching in the middle of the night.
Ooh.
Yeah, you know what that tells me? That tells me that whoever took your photo was like, holy God, she's squatting. Let's put her in this weird dark cabin. But the point is that you're squatting in jeans.
I was actually, you know what I was thinking at that time? I was thinking about how hungry I was. I was really...
Was your stomach going...
No, I just was like hungry. We've been shooting for like 2 hours and I was starving.
Oh, poor baby.
Yeah, that's probably real torturous.
I needed a butter knife, Max. I don't know where you were at the time, but next time I'll just have to take you with me.
It's just so hot to think of a female horror author squatting in her jeans and her stomach's going...
You just love that word.
But Tom, please, let's find out...
Dragon.
What?
I was like crouching dragon.
Yes. Tom, ask Sarah about her books.
I will. I want to know what's going on. Well, the last time we talked to you, Sarah, you were doing... I think you had Cursed Casino was coming out or was just about out. I think if I remember correctly. I mean, so it's been a while. I mean, we haven't had you on in a little over a year. I mean, tell us what's been going on with you, man, because we're all sitting here waiting for Max to shut up so we can hear what the hell you're up to.
Oh, well, you know, it's been a really good year. I've finished a couple of additional books. I've written a book called Sunken Park. And then I also wrote a couple of novellas. I was also published with Clive Barker and John Carpenter, I think, since we last talked, in a book of short stories, which was really great. And I've just basically finished another book that is not with a publisher yet. I've just signed with an agent who's working with me and some bigger publishers. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about that. And then I've got a book that I'm writing right now for a publishing company called Sinister Grin Press. Those guys are amazing. I'm writing a book for them that is definitely going to be great and will be coming out in probably mid next year. And then finally, I've been moving into somewhat of the TV area, and I'm working on a couple of things, including a series. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot one of the things that's coming out next month, actually. I have a series book that's coming out next month with Latches Publishing. It's the first book in a series of about 4 or 5 books. It's a paranormal romance horror kind of thing. Of course, lots of sex, as you know, I always incorporate in my stories.
Sex and death, right, Sarah? I mean, this is
Sex and horror. I've been called
horror.
erotica by some of the reviewers.
You said you published a short story in the book alongside Clive Barker and John Carpenter. Who are those guys?
Oh, I don't know. It's interesting because
That's
most
pretty
people,
good company.
yeah, and a lot of people think that John Carpenter is only a director, and he obviously came out with Halloween and all of those great movies, but he's actually a really good writer as well. And so to be in an anthology with those two gentlemen is such an honor, given how experienced they are and how long they've been in working on their craft.
Of
So
course.
that was really exciting, and my story with them was called Famine, and it's about cannibalism actually. So kind of an interesting short story. But yeah, so the book world is going great. Like I said, I'm finishing up a book for a publishing company next year called Sinister Grin, and another book that's coming out next month. And then on the TV side, I'm actually working on a couple of things. I can't really talk too much about them, but I am working on a paranormal show with a celebrity who I cannot name, but it will be where we're basically investigating haunted places together.
Okay.
On cable. And then I just signed on, and I can share this. I signed on with the former president of HBO programming to work on a series for TV for the series of books that are coming out next month for me. So hopefully we'll be able to get that on the air soon, and it's very exciting. So lots of stuff going on.
Well, Sarah, it sounds like you're real busy. Can you please repeat all that, because I didn't get all of it?
Can I ask a question, Tom?
Absolutely. Yes, Max. Carte blanche, Max. Carte blanche.
So, Sarah, why bring up, it's me and a celebrity in a show, but I can't talk about it? Why? Is that a social media trick? Like, why even say it if you're not ready to talk about it?
I'm actually, and I'll answer it really seriously, even though I know you're a huge pain in the ass, and you'll probably keep asking me the same question over and over again. But the truth is that I'm really excited about this show because I do believe in the paranormals. We've talked about on prior shows together when we had the pleasure of being on the radio together for 3 hours at a time. And
those are the days.
it was fantastic. But I'm really excited about that reality show because I do believe in the paranormal, and I put together a documentary that was a hell of a lot better than what we just watched recently. I really did discover that there is more than meets the eye. So
I believe you, and I would watch that. It's funny about you, and I've always, clearly you don't look at my shit on Facebook, but I always see your shit on Facebook, and I always appreciate the fact that you're always creating, and and I'm not saying you come off as conceited or anything, but you do have a confidence, and you do believe in yourself, and I think, Sarah, that is a really, really important quality, and I think if there's anything we can instill in our friend Tom Detloff is a sense of confidence, even though he's a guy with the gout about to start a new job.
Get back in the hot seat, Tom. You thought you were done. Sit
What the hell
down.
is going on here?
Turn the light on.
Money.
Yeah.
What advice, even for the aspiring anyone, someone who wants to write, how do you get that confidence, even for myself and Sarah? And I've had a lot of success in my own right, but I can't feel good about it yet. How do you achieve that level of belief in yourself, confidence, and fortitude?
I don't. I think it's really important to not look at everybody else and see what everyone else is doing, because I think you can really become very disgruntled and lose your morale if you look at people who are very successful and you're not where you want to be yet. I try literally I really don't stay on Facebook very often, and I try to just kind of focus on what my dreams are, what my goals are, and just move forward. And I've had shitty reviews. I've had people say that I can't write. I've had people say, well, you're just a hot piece of ass and you don't know what you're doing. I mean, I've heard it all, particularly being in the horror genre and being a woman. It's very, very difficult to get the respect. But you know what? I don't really do it for the people. I mean, everybody has a right to have an opinion. I never get upset with it. The people who like my stuff and who say stuff like, oh, I'm on Sarah Brooke withdrawal because she hasn't had a book out in the past 6 months, or guys who will email me regularly, different people who read my books and they're like, you rocked. I loved it. You was so twisted. I couldn't believe that could come out of you. Kind of thing. That's what jazzes me. So I don't think you should look at what other people are doing. Or, just have your own goals.
Yeah.
Focus on the positive.
Yeah.
So would you say that to Tom? Would you say, don't look at what other people are doing, just Focus on your.
I would say totally
Max, you are a bastard. He's brilliant.
Knife.
Oh, we know Joe is doing his own thing. We know that Dave Pace is doing his, and I'm still looking for that fucking Rue Morgue magazine, Dave. I keep asking my wife, and she's like, issue 49 is not there at the Barnes. But it's the Tom that we want to nurture right now. So we're working on that, Sarah.
We're getting there.
I think Tom's awesome. And I think he's got his own skills and his own talents, and he's just rolling with it, you know?
So would you engage in? Let me ask you this. I'll be gentle. Would you engage in a elongated hug with Tom, even though he has the gout?
How bad's the gout? Are you like pregnant gout or something?
Yes, my knee is like ready to give birth right now.
Well, if it was just your knee, I would still hug you.
Thanks.
If I could put my arms around you, and I'm sure I can, then I would absolutely hug you, yes.
Would you grind that sweet squatty backside of yours on his blown out folded
Max.
Max, that would hurt.
Ow! Ow! Sarah, stop! You're hurting my gouty knee! Ow!
Holy shit. Joe, man, this is just... I can't do this anymore, man.
Don't worry, I'll be gone next week or whatever.
Joe,
what's the next show? More boring movies?
No, the next show is Man Bites Dog and
right. But I mean the next lineup.
Oh, the next lineup is Boston movies. We're going to be doing Ted and then Mystic River and the Friends of Eddie Coyle.
Oh, that's the counselor's show. Yeah, I've already snored in his ear, too, for it. He told me.
Well, Sarah, listen, everybody can still get to your website, www.sarahbrooke.com.
Yep.
And you know, right. Joe, she has a link to our podcast on our website. Can you believe this chick?
That's awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, that's very nice of you.
We'll definitely link to your stuff. So send Tom or me, if you still have my email address, send everything over. We'll post it with the post.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sarah?
Sounds good, yeah.
Do you, as a woman, your skin is so soft, and you've got that beautiful mane of red curls, do you just
The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is edited by...
Sort of sit there.
Jesus Christ, Tom, come on.
In a satin purple robe that kind of slips, it keeps slipping off your shoulder because your skin is so soft. A satin purple robe, and you're sitting there with black candles.
We haven't had a woman on in a while, Joe. Let him have fun for another 60 seconds.
All right.
And
you know what I think,
shaved legs.
I think you've been fantasizing about me since the last time I was on the show. And now you're just getting it all out. It's like you're purging it.
I totally pretended to Tom that I was Sarah Brooke. Oh, come on. And I was so excited.
Your butter.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Hey, listen, Sarah.
Dave's sleeping. Dave's sleeping.
Said a word in an hour. Dave hasn't said anything since his review.
Dave, come on! I need you to back me up here.
No, I'm sitting the sexual assault hour out. I'm good.
It's a good idea. Sarah, thanks so much for coming on again. We'll definitely have you back on soon. It was lovely to talk to you. Thanks for watching the movie. Thanks for talking about the movie. You were so awesome. We're going to stay in touch. We're going to post your stuff on our website. And everyone go to www.sarahbrooke.com. Check out her wonderful work. It's awesome. Guys, the Cutting Room Movie Podcast is brought to you by Christiana Productions and New Media Limited. The show is edited and co-produced by Joseph Schreck and produced by Thomas Detloff and Joe Christiana. You can like us on Facebook at the Cutting Room Movie Podcast and follow me on Twitter, Thomas Detloff, at TCRM Podcast. You could also check out Joe's film work at ChristianaProductions.com. And Max Cook has a new blog out there. It's totally amazing. MaxCookUncorked.com. Go over there and check that stuff out. And you could also check out Max and Adam's Bowler Hat Productions for old time's sake and their Mimosa podcast show at MaxCookandTheCounselor.com. Dave Pace is now a contributing writer at Rue Morgue magazine. Look for his work over there and check out his blog on horror media politics, La Politique, Psychotronique at psychotronique.anidealforliving.com. That is a mouthful. Music from the Cutting Room is done by the Zillatones. Check them out at www.thezillatones.com or search for the Zillatones at ReverbNation.com. We will be back next week, and we're going to continue our discussion on horror and serial killers, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We're doing Man Bites Dog and 15 Murders. Until then, we are over, and we are out.
That had their eyes gouged out or beheaded. They became saints from a martyrdom, a great tragedy. I thought that was powerful. I began to think that it's the shadow self of these saints that is just as important. The shadow self being, for instance, what about the person who committed the atrocity on that saint? The soldier that stabbed Jesus or crowned him with thorns? That side has to be just as compelling. One would not exist without the other. It seemed almost as if their side of the story needed to be told. Joe understood that the reason we have serial killer culture is that we are no longer allowed to worship at black altars. The monoculture is death. We have nowhere to put all the blackness it produces but into our treasured tribal shaman, who exact the price of our comfort in terror and blood, which is all too real. Then we hold up the executioner, the man who wields the sacrificial dagger, and exalt him in our tabloids. Then it all happens over and over again. Serial killer culture is God, America, and apple pie. It's the price of your suburbs and your need for an all-American ideal.
Dave Pace, happy Halloween, my friends.
Happy, yeah.
Very happy. Well, listen.
How we handle these natures is how we are defined. Some find balance, some go to extremes. Still others go into territory beyond. Having an outlet for our dark natures, a place we can channel those thoughts and feelings and explore them, exercise them, seems essential to me. Maybe this is because I feel particularly sympathetic to my own dark nature. This outlet is precisely what sanitized monoculture is attempting to destroy, and what so much of our culture is dedicated to eliminating. Maybe it's because I believe ritual is powerful as a psychological force, but I feel like if it was socially acceptable for me to carry out satanic curses upon the souls of, say, motion picture executives, I could have a mechanism by which I could channel work through my hate and anger. I know the devil probably isn't going to actually come and suck the soul out of the Google billionaires I can't fucking stand, but perhaps the ritual act of praying to the legions of hell for it for 7 days, and then blasting a load into a pentagram or some shit, heals me somehow. It gives me power over those dark feelings. Fortunately, for the awesome forces of neo-Puritanism, these kind of outlets and expressions are dutifully marked as socially unacceptable, and even worse, heretical. Where there was once a guy you prayed to if you wanted world peace, and a guy you prayed to so your crops grew well, and there was this other guy you prayed to for some other impulses in your life. Things like sex, the misfortune of your rivals, forbidden knowledge. You had the option. You may have had to be discreet about it, your trip to visit the temple of Asmodeus or whatever the fuck, but it was just as valid a human impulse. Then these cults got it in their heads that there was only one God, and that God was everything good and righteous. Now look where the fuck we are. These squeaky clean maniacs have spent the better part of a few centuries taking away any outlet for the dark impulses that course through your veins. As soon as they find a new one, they make sure to oppose it. They have committed themselves to sewing up all the ripped seams in our culture, but no matter how many stitches they put in there to contain this darkness, it always finds a way to come spilling out. Serial killers are just the latest rip in the fabric, the newest outlet. They are shamanic figures in our society, channeling the madman who wants to howl at the moon and fuck and kill anything that gets in the way. That person lives inside each of us, and we are all so much more closer than we think to a frothing mouth full of foam and human gristle. These maniacs serve as the place where we put all these feelings. So ultimately, I don't have a hell of a lot to say about this as a documentary because it was just, it kind of was what it was. I think it lingered a little too long on some of the band bullshit that I didn't really care about. But it got me thinking about this. So ours is a society which deserves to be punished. We have called out for correction so loudly for so long, yet we act surprised when it arrives. Our culture has banished dark gods. washed away, cleansed out are all the divine representations of our most venal, and some would argue most human, desires. Our Buddha smiles like a jolly fat man. Our gods are clean and upstanding citizens, and even when they aren't, we simply hand-wave it away. Their dark sides are covered by slick apologetics. I have few beliefs I'd call spiritual, but this is about as close as I get. We are all beings of light and darkness. The two are intimately connected. Light and dark, life and death, Eros, Thanatos, God, devil. Most of us will never understand what it's like to stand alone, outside of human morality and steadfastly in the camp of pure evil. The fascination with them is the same fascination and fetishization the repressed always feel. Denial breeds a deeper kind of fanatic. They represent the part of us polite society says should never, ever get a voice, and in denying us that voice have ensured that the outlet for this voice will never be healthy, never be anything but destructive and a waste of human life. I had the extreme pleasure of talking to artist Joe Coleman, who was interviewed in this film, at length on this very topic for Fangoria back in the day. Something he said to me about his own relationship with serial killers, he corresponded with the likes of Charlie Manson and John Wayne Gacy, stuck with me ever since. You could say he helped shape my whole perspective on the concept. He said this: if you want to talk about the real questions in life and the real questions about morality and reason, these are people that have gone over the edge. So who are you going to talk to? These are the people who have really confronted that. What do they think, being on the other side of morality, humanity, and reason? All the saints I grew up learning about, they'd all suffered some kind of great suffering. Whether it was a saint